order to possess, run the processes, or deliver the attributions of courage, we must first hold vulnerability. Now, a lot of women lack the processes, or let's just call them skills gap for a moment, of carrying through truthful courage because they don't want to utilize vulnerability. And the reason why this actually happens for a lot of women out there, and also does happen to men, but more so women, I have noticed, is because somewhere in your life where you were vulnerable and you expressed your emotions and you actually were vulnerable to say, this is what I'm feeling and this is what's holding me back, and so you were slammed and the door was closed in your face, and what happens in that moment, the courage just sort of shuts down. And in those moments, what happens time after time, if you rewind and you play and you rewind and you play, you find that the vulnerability almost diminishes, and so you hold your guard up. And some people, utilize it as passive aggression. They become screamers, they become protectors, they become the doormat to their own thoughts, and that is just a repercussion of being shut down when vulnerability was used as a main voice of expression. And what I'm trying to relate to you today is that in order to really sustain and hold and run the process of courage in front of someone, whether it's your partner, whether it's your child, whether it's somebody at work or a family member or friend that you want to confront, if you have removed the element of vulnerability, the courage sounds a bit cocky. On top of that, courage could even come across as egocentric, as overly confident, to the point where your message is no longer coming across because you're so bluntly direct, and that's because you've been shut down through vulnerability. But if you do not rebuild the skill set to hold the vulnerability, which compassion lies, you won't be able to hold the right message. You won't be able to relay that message across through courage, because you've removed the element of compassion, empathy, understanding, soothingness. So what happens, the courage just comes so blunt across that nobody's now listening, and you get shut down again. And so what happens time after time, you've removed and eliminated vulnerability when you've used it through courage, and then you end up removing courage because you've been shut down even with that, because the approach has changed and become passive aggressive. And then here you are let down with two parts of yourself that you need the most as a woman or even as a man. Because if you try to relay your information just through courage or without vulnerability, you've lost the basics and the essence of sending the message across. And if you use your vulnerability and not know how to have the courage to deliver the information, you're going to just be a sitting duck. And so the message I'm trying to bring up to you, I can so understand if you've been let down, if you've been shut down, if people have really hurt your emotions, your feelings, and you've surrendered to that, and you've given them the power to control the emotional states that you choose to feel in the moments of a lack of understanding. What happens, you will have these skill gaps. And what I'm trying to relay to you today is build the courage and hold the vulnerability that you once had to re-deliver your message. And the reason why I say this, and I'm very firm with this, is because if you truly want to relay a message to someone without holding that misunderstanding, you do need the vulnerability, because the vulnerability is what's going to hold the compassion and the empathy. Your tone and tempo of voice will naturally calm down and your message will come across. And I mean, it doesn't have to be expressed to every person you know. Some people are just harsh, and that's the reality, that's the truth that we live in. And some people are there to listen, and others are there to listen to understand, and others just want to understand without listening, just by looking at your physiology. So if you can conform all of this to deliver your message, so for the listeners, for the understanders, for the however their model of the world is, and sort of analytically diagnose and dissect the person's character in front of you, you will know how to express yourself in emotion of vulnerability and courage, so your message does come across without it being attacked, without it being misunderstood, and without you being misunderstood in a way within your own voice. And so when you do go back home and you do relay this information, you don't feel a void or a lack that, oh my God, the questioning, the judgment starts to come out. And here you are thinking, crap, what did I say? I shouldn't have said it this way. I should have said it that way. You won't have to question yourself because you've tackled it through every area. And I mean, the first few times you are going to stumble and you are going to fall until you get it right. But something Brene Brown stuck with me when I watched her TED Talk over, 8 years ago? And I've read all her books, and she studies all, and she does research all around shame and vulnerability and courage, and she expresses how without vulnerability you can't be courageous because you need one to have the other. And I'm so for that, and I agree with that. But what happens to us when we've gone through a form of trauma, or being let down by others, or being shut down, whether it's our parents or our siblings or even our partner, and they've slandered us through their words or lack of understanding our words, the vulnerability becomes sheltered and protected in our own minds. And so when courage is utilized, it's utilized in a blunt way. And what I'm trying to say is tap into your vulnerability once again, but understand the person in front of you. And if you can read and tap into your own core trust and intuition to understand the person in front of you, you will know how to use the right sense of vulnerability and courage to deliver the message that you would like to get across. It's just a natural form. But what happens to a lot of us is we fall into the victim mentality, being born a victim from a victim. And so being a part of a victim, we cry for help, and sometimes that's not the answer. And we need to really honestly, we need to start thinking of the other person in order to deliver our message. And what I mean by that is, don't take it personal. Don't take shit to heart, man. Really, just don't take it to heart. Think about, I'm trying to send my message. Don't worry about the reaction. Think more so, again, if you do get a reaction that is not very pleasant, find another way. Wean yourself in a different way. Maybe that person needs a different form of approach. Still using your vulnerability and your courage, because it takes a lot of courage to send your message across in like 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 different ways to that person in the same conversation until they get it. It takes a lot of patience and tenacity, and it takes a lot of core trust within yourself, your own intuition. You're tapping into your own power. You're walking into your own power. And if you can do that, you've established a foundation of communication, of expression, and you know how to deliver your message across to the person sitting in front of you. And so that's what I wanted to share with you today. From my heart to yours, as always, sending you lots of love.